Am I the asshole for getting mad at a friend for changing in front of me? This happened 6 months ago, and I'm still dealing with the aftermath. What started as what I thought was a simple boundary issue turned into a nightmare of manipulation, gaslighting, and friend group drama that I never saw coming. I'm Derek, 27 years old, and this is about my former friend Hazel, who's 26. Before I dive into what happened, I need you to understand what our friendship was like, because context matters here. Hazel and I had been close friends for almost 3 years. We met at a company retreat when I was working for a digital marketing firm in Austin, Texas. She had just started in the same department, and we instantly clicked over our shared love of obscure indie movies and terrible puns. From the beginning, our relationship was strictly platonic. Not because either of us wasn't attractive. Hazel was undeniably beautiful, with these striking green eyes and auburn hair that caught light in a way that made people do double takes. But we just never had that spark, you know? She felt like a sister to me, and I thought I felt the same way to her. We'd hang out constantly, grab dinner, binge-watch Netflix series, complain about work, the whole 9 yards. She'd crash at my place after nights out. I'd drive her to the airport for family visits. It was the kind of friendship where boundaries felt natural and unspoken. Hazel was always very clear about keeping things platonic too. She'd constantly refer to me as bro or dude. And whenever anyone suggested there might be something romantic between us, she'd shut it down immediately. "Derek's like my brother," she'd say, making this exaggerated, grossed-out face. That would be so weird. I appreciated the clarity, honestly. It meant we could be close without any of that awkward will-they-won't-they tension that ruins so many friendships. We had this great friend group too, about 8 people total who'd all met through work or college connections. There was Mason and Ivy, who were dating. Then single friends like Jordan, Paige, and Quinn. We'd do group trips, game nights, birthday celebrations. Hazel and I were kind of the social coordinators of the group, always organizing hangouts and keeping everyone connected. It felt like we'd found our tribe, you know? That perfect friend group you see in movies but never think actually exists in real life. The first signs that something might be off started about 6 months before the incident. Little things that I didn't think much about at the time, but looking back, they form a pattern. Hazel started making these comments about how I was too uptight or too traditional about certain things. Like we'd be watching a movie with a sex scene and she'd make jokes about how I'd probably cover my eyes. Or she'd tease me about being such a gentleman when I'd wait outside while she changed clothes during shopping trips. I didn't think much of it because friends tease each other, right? And honestly, maybe I am a bit more conservative than some people. I was raised in a pretty traditional household in small-town Oklahoma. My parents taught me to respect women, to knock before entering rooms, to look away when someone's changing clothes. Basic courtesy stuff that I thought everyone learned growing up. But Hazel seemed to find this endlessly amusing. She started pushing boundaries in small ways, like she'd change her shirt in the back seat of my car after workout classes, claiming it was no big deal when I'd turn around or focus on my phone. Or she'd walk around her apartment in just a bra and shorts when I came over, saying she was too hot to put on a real shirt. Each time, when I'd react with any discomfort or try to be respectful, she'd laugh and say I was being silly or old-fashioned. I started feeling like there was this test I didn't understand, like she was trying to prove some point I wasn't getting. But I figured maybe this was just how comfortable friendships worked for some people. Maybe I was being too uptight. So I tried to roll with it, even though something about it felt off. The breaking point came on a Saturday in March. Our friend group had planned this big day out. We were going to hit up this new food truck festival downtown, then catch a movie, maybe grab drinks afterward. It was one of those perfect spring days where everyone's mood is just elevated because winter's finally over. I was genuinely excited to hang out with everyone. I got to Hazel's apartment around 2:30, about half an hour before we were supposed to meet up with the others. She told me to come early because she was running behind and needed to finish up some freelance work. This wasn't unusual. Hazel did graphic design on the side, and she often worked weekend mornings to meet deadlines. When I knocked, she called for me to come in. Her apartment was this cute one-bedroom place in East Austin, with exposed brick walls covered in her artwork and plants everywhere. Very trendy, very her. I found her in her bedroom, sitting cross-legged on her bed with her laptop, wearing an oversized t-shirt and pajama shorts, hair pulled up in a messy bun. "Hey bro," she said without looking up from her screen. "I'm almost done with this logo design. Just give me like 10 more minutes and then I'll get ready." "No problem," I said, settling into the chair by her window. We chatted while she worked. Nothing deep, just the usual stuff about the weather, our plans for the day, some gossip about our co-workers. It felt normal, comfortable. This was the Hazel I knew and loved as a friend. Funny, creative, easy to be around. At exactly 3 o'clock, she saved her work and closed the laptop. Okay, she said, stretching her arms above her head. Time to make myself presentable for public consumption. She got up from the bed and walked over to her dresser, pulling out some clothes. I'm thinking the blue sundress, or maybe jeans and that new top I bought last week. Either one sounds good, I said, scrolling through my phone to check if any of our friends had texted about meeting times or locations. You always look great. That's when it happened. Without any warning, without asking me to turn around or step out, Hazel grabbed the hem of her oversized t-shirt and pulled it over her head. Just like that, she was standing there in her pajama shorts and nothing else, completely topless, not 3 feet away from me. I was so shocked that for a split second I just froze. My brain couldn't process what was happening. Then my mom's voice echoed in my head. All those lessons about being respectful, about treating women with dignity. And I immediately covered my eyes with my hand and turned my head away. Whoa, Hazel, I said, my voice probably sounding more panicked than I intended. Could you maybe warn me next time? Or I can step out while you change. Instead of apologizing or acknowledging that this might be uncomfortable for me, Hazel laughed. Not a nervous laugh or an oops, sorry laugh. A genuine, amused laugh, like she found my reaction hilarious. Derek, relax, she said, and I could hear her moving around the room, presumably still undressed. It's not a big deal. We're friends. You don't need to be so dramatic about it. I kept my eyes covered and my head turned toward the wall. I'm not being dramatic, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I just think you should have given me a heads up so I could step out of the room. It's basic courtesy. Courtesy? She sounded genuinely confused, like I was speaking a foreign language. Derek, it's just skin. You're acting like you've never seen a woman's body before. Are you seriously going to sexualize me over this? That word, sexualize, hit me like a slap. I'm not sexualizing you, I said, feeling heat rise in my cheeks. I'm trying to be respectful. There's a difference. Is there though? Hazel said, and I could hear the edge creeping into her voice. Because a real friend wouldn't make this weird. A real friend would see me as a person, not a sex object. I felt like I was in some kind of bizarre alternate reality. How had my attempt to be respectful gotten twisted into me being disrespectful? Hazel, I said, still not turning around. I do see you as a person. That's exactly why I don't want to see you naked without your permission. That's what respect looks like. My permission? She laughed again, but this time it sounded sharper, more bitter. We're in my bedroom, in my apartment. If I'm comfortable changing in front of you, why are you making it about you? I could feel this conversation spiraling somewhere I didn't want it to go, but I couldn't figure out how to stop it. Because I'm also a person in this room, I said. And I have boundaries too. I don't want to see you naked. Not because there's anything wrong with your body, but because we're friends and that feels inappropriate to me. Oh my God, Hazel said, and I heard her moving around more, presumably getting dressed. You are being so weird right now. It's like you think I'm going to jump you or something. Newsflash, I'm not attracted to you, Derek. This isn't some romantic comedy where I'm trying to seduce you. I'm literally just changing clothes. Finally, I heard her say, okay, you can look now, and I turned back around. She was wearing the blue sundress she'd mentioned, looking perfectly put together, but her face was flushed and her eyes were bright with what looked like anger. Look, I said, trying to diffuse the tension. I didn't mean to make this into a big thing. I just think it would be better if you warned me next time, or if I stepped out. That's all. But Hazel wasn't interested in diffusing anything. She crossed her arms and stared at me with this look I'd never seen before, like she was seeing something in me that disgusted her. There won't be a next time, she said coldly, because apparently you can't handle basic adult friendship. I can't believe you're making me feel ashamed of my own body in my own room. I'm not trying to make you feel ashamed, I said, standing up from the chair. I'm just trying to maintain some boundaries. Boundaries, she repeated, like it was a dirty word. Right. Well, maybe you should examine where those boundaries come from, Derek. Maybe you should think about why you're so uncomfortable with the female form that you can't even be in the same room as a friend getting dressed. I felt like I was losing my mind. How had this become about me having some kind of problem with women? Hazel, if Jordan or Mason or any of our guy friends started stripping down in front of you without warning, would you be okay with that? That's completely different, she said immediately. How? Because, she started, then stopped, her mouth opening and closing like she was searching for words. Because it just is. Men and women are different. So you admit there's a difference, I said. But you're mad at me for acknowledging that difference. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see something calculating in her eyes, like she was deciding something. Then she grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Let's just go meet our friends, she said, Before you make this even weirder than it already is, the rest of the day was incredibly awkward. Hazel acted completely normal around everyone else, laughing, joking, being her usual charming self. But toward me, she was cold and distant. When I tried to join conversations, she'd find reasons to move away. When I made jokes, she'd give these tight, fake smiles. It was like I had suddenly become this unwelcome presence in our friend group. Our friends definitely noticed the tension. Mason pulled me aside at one point and asked if everything was okay between Hazel and me. I didn't know what to say. How do you explain that situation without sounding either creepy or like you're bad-mouthing your friend? We just had a disagreement about something, I told him. It'll blow over. But it didn't blow over. That night, around 11 p.m., my phone started buzzing with texts from Hazel. A lot of texts. "I can't believe how you acted today," the first one read. Then, "You made me feel so uncomfortable and ashamed. I thought you were my friend, but apparently you just see me as a sex object like every other guy. You were so rude and gross about the whole thing. A real friend wouldn't have made me feel bad about my own body." The messages kept coming, each one more accusatory than the last. I read through them feeling like I was taking crazy pills. Had we been in the same room earlier? Was I remembering the situation completely wrong? I tried calling her, but she didn't answer. So I texted back, "Hazel, I don't see you as a sex object. That's exactly why I wanted to be respectful about boundaries. Can we talk about this?" Her response came immediately. "There's nothing to talk about. You showed your true colors today. I just need some space to figure out if I can even be friends with someone who thinks so little of women." I stared at that message for probably 10 minutes, reading it over and over. Someone who thinks so little of women. I felt like I was in an episode of The Twilight Zone. Everything I thought I knew about the situation was being turned upside down. Against my better judgment, I texted back, "I don't think little of women. I was trying to be respectful. If you wanted to change clothes, I would have been happy to step out of the room. That's what most people would do." "Most people," she replied, "aren't stuck in the 1950s. Most people can handle adult friendships without making everything sexual." "I wasn't making anything sexual," I typed back, probably too quickly. "That's the point. I specifically didn't want it to be sexual, which is why I looked away." "Right," came her response, "because you couldn't trust yourself around my body. Because you couldn't see me as just a friend." I threw my phone across the room in frustration. There was no winning this argument because the rules kept changing. If I looked, I'd be a pervert. If I looked away, I was sexualizing her. If I stayed in the room, I was making her uncomfortable. If I tried to leave, I was being dramatic. I didn't respond to any more texts that night, but I lay awake for hours trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. Maybe I had overreacted. Maybe this was just how adult friendships worked and I was being immature about it. Maybe I did have some internalized issues about women's bodies that I needed to examine. But every time I tried to convince myself I was the problem, I kept coming back to the same thought. If the situation had been reversed, if I had stripped down in front of Hazel without warning, everyone would agree that was inappropriate. So why was it different just because she was a woman? The next few days were weird. Hazel didn't text me at all, which was unusual because we normally talked every day. I saw her post Instagram stories of herself hanging out with some of our mutual friends, but I wasn't included in any of the group chats about those hangouts. It felt like I was being slowly frozen out of the group. Finally, on Wednesday, I decided to try reaching out. I sent her a simple text. "Hey, can we talk about what happened on Saturday? I miss my friend." She didn't respond for hours, and when she did, it was just, "I don't think that's a good idea right now." That weekend, I found out through Instagram that our entire friend group had gone to a new brewery downtown, without me. Mason hadn't texted me about it, neither had Jordan or Paige or Quinn. It was like I'd become invisible. I was hurt and confused, but I figured maybe they'd just forgotten to include me. These things happen, right? But when I texted Mason about it, his response was weird and evasive. "Oh yeah, it was kind of a last-minute thing," he said. "Sorry man, next time." But there was something in his tone that felt off, like he was uncomfortable talking to me. That's when I realized Hazel had probably told our friends her version of what happened, and her version apparently painted me as the bad guy. I spent the next few days feeling like I was losing my mind. I kept replaying the situation over and over, trying to figure out what I could have done differently. Should I have just acted like it was no big deal when she stripped down in front of me? Should I have made jokes about it? Should I have complimented her body? Every option felt wrong. The breaking point came the following Friday night. I was at home, watching Netflix and feeling sorry for myself when Jordan called me. "Dude," he said without preamble, "what the hell did you do to Hazel?" My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" She's been telling everyone that you sexually harassed her, Jordan said. She says you made inappropriate comments about her body and made her feel unsafe. Is that true? I felt like the world was tilting sideways. What? No! Jordan, that's not what happened at all. Then what did happen? Because she's pretty upset, and she's got Mason and Ivy convinced that you're some kind of predator. So I told him everything, exactly as it happened. The changing clothes, my reaction, the texts afterward, all of it. Jordan listened without interrupting, and when I was done, there was a long silence. That's it? He finally said. She got mad at you for looking away when she was topless? That's it, I said, feeling a massive wave of relief that someone finally believed me. But apparently that makes me a sexist who can't handle adult friendship. Jordan was quiet for another moment. Then, dude, that's messed up. If some girl I wasn't dating stripped down in front of me without warning, I'd be uncomfortable too. That's not normal behavior. Thank you, I said, probably too emphatically. I thought I was going crazy. And she's telling people you harassed her? Jordan sounded incredulous. That's some serious manipulation right there. Look, I'm going to talk to Mason and the others, okay? This is getting out of hand. That conversation was the first time in 2 weeks that I felt like I could breathe properly. Someone believed me. Someone understood that I wasn't the villain in this story. But it also made me realize how serious the situation had become. Hazel wasn't just mad at me. She was actively trying to destroy my reputation and turn our friends against me. Over what? Over me trying to be respectful? Jordan was as good as his word. Over the next few days, he talked to Mason, Ivy, Paige, and Quinn, explaining my side of the story. The reaction was mixed, but at least people were starting to ask questions. Mason called me that Sunday. Hey man, he said, I think there might have been some miscommunication about what happened with you and Hazel. What did she tell you? I asked. She said you made her feel uncomfortable and objectified, Mason said carefully. But Jordan says that's not the whole story. So I told Mason the same thing I'd told Jordan. Mason listened, asked a few clarifying questions, and then sighed heavily. You know what's messed up? He said. If I had done what Hazel did to Ivy, just stripped down in front of her without warning, she would have kicked me out of the apartment. And if I then tried to make her feel bad for being uncomfortable, she'd probably break up with me. Exactly, I said. But somehow when I set a boundary, I'm the bad guy. I'm going to talk to the others, Mason said. This isn't fair to you. Word got back to Hazel that people were questioning her version of events, and she did not take it well. She started sending long, emotional messages to our group chat about how hurt she was that people were taking the side of someone who made her feel unsafe in her own home. She talked about how disappointed she was in all of us for supporting misogyny and victim blaming. Reading those messages was surreal. She was positioning herself as the victim of my respectful behavior. She was claiming I had made her unsafe by trying to preserve both of our dignity. It was like living in an alternate reality. But some of our friends were starting to see through it. Paige in particular was not having it. Hold up, she wrote in the group chat. Derek looked away when you were changing, and you're mad about that. Girl, that's literally what respectful people do. You don't understand, Hazel replied. It wasn't about him looking away. It was about him making me feel ashamed of my body. It was about him acting like I was some kind of temptress he couldn't trust himself around. But didn't you get undressed without warning him first? Quinn chimed in. Like, in most situations, people ask someone to leave the room or step out themselves before changing clothes. It's my apartment, Hazel typed back, and I could feel her frustration even through the text. And we're friends. Friends don't sexualize each other's bodies. Friends also don't put each other in uncomfortable situations, Ivy added. If Mason suddenly stripped down in front of Derek without warning, that would be weird too. That's completely different, Hazel responded immediately. How? Paige asked. And just like in our original argument, Hazel couldn't explain how it was different. She just insisted that it was. The group chat went quiet after that. I could feel the tide turning, people starting to realize that maybe Hazel's version of events didn't add up. But I also knew this was far from over. Sure enough, the next day, Hazel asked if we could meet up to talk. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown, somewhere public where we could hopefully have a rational conversation. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with a latte. Looking smaller and more vulnerable than I'd seen her in weeks. For a moment I felt a pang of the old affection I'd had for her. This was my friend. Someone I'd cared about. Maybe we could work this out. Hi Derek, she said quietly when I sat down. Hi Hazel. For a few minutes we just sat there in awkward silence. Finally she spoke. I owe you an apology, she said, not meeting my eyes. I felt a rush of relief. Thank you. I accept your apology. But, she continued, and my heart sank, I need you to understand why I reacted the way I did. Here we go, I thought. When you covered your eyes and asked me to warn you next time, she said, it made me feel like you saw me as a sexual object instead of a person. It made me feel like my body was something shameful that needed to be hidden. Hazel, I said, trying to keep my voice gentle. That's not how I see you at all. I covered my eyes because I respect you, not because I don't. But don't you see how that's confusing for me? She said, finally looking at me. If you really saw me as just a friend, like a sister, then my body wouldn't be threatening to you. I stared at her, trying to process this logic. So you're saying that in order to prove I'm not attracted to you, I should be comfortable seeing you naked? Well, when you put it like that, it sounds crazy, she said with a frustrated laugh. Because it is crazy, I said. Hazel, I can respect you as a person and have personal boundaries about nudity. Those two things aren't contradictory. She was quiet for a long moment, staring into her latte. Then she said something that changed everything. Okay, I need to be honest with you about something. My stomach clenched. What? I've had feelings for you, she said quietly. For a while now. Like romantic feelings. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. What? And I guess I was testing you, she continued, still not looking at me. I wanted to see how you'd react if I changed in front of you. I thought maybe if you were attracted to me, you'd, I don't know, say something or do something that would give me an opening. I stared at her in complete shock. Hazel, when you looked away and seemed so uncomfortable, she went on, I felt rejected and embarrassed, and I think I lashed out because I was hurt. So this whole thing, I said slowly, the texts, turning our friends against me, calling me sexist and saying I harassed you, that was because you were hurt that I didn't respond to your test the way you wanted? She winced. I know how it sounds. It sounds like you manipulated our entire friend group because you were embarrassed about getting rejected for something I didn't even know was happening, I said, my voice rising slightly. I'm sorry, she said, and she did sound genuinely remorseful. I know I handled it badly. I was hurt and confused, and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair. I sat back in my chair, trying to process this bombshell. Hazel, you spent 3 years telling everyone we were just friends. You called me bro constantly. You made gagging faces whenever anyone suggested we might be a couple. How was I supposed to know you had feelings? I know, she said miserably. I was scared of ruining the friendship if you didn't feel the same way. So I kept insisting we were just friends, even when I wanted more. And then you got mad at me for believing you when you said we were just friends? She didn't answer that directly. Instead, she said, do you think you could ever see me that way? Romantically, I mean? I looked at her sitting there, looking vulnerable and hopeful, and I felt nothing. Not attraction, not affection, not even pity, just exhaustion. Hazel, I said carefully, even if I had been attracted to you before all this happened, I couldn't be with someone who handles conflict the way you do. You didn't just hurt me. You tried to destroy my reputation because you were embarrassed. You turned our friends against me. You made me question my own sanity for weeks. Her face fell. I said I was sorry. I know you did, and I appreciate that. But sorry doesn't undo the damage. We sat in silence for a few more minutes. Finally, Hazel asked, so what happens now? I thought about it. I think we can be civil to each other when we're with our friends, I said, but I don't think we can go back to being close. I don't trust you anymore. She nodded sadly. I understand. And Hazel? I added. I need you to set the record straight with our friends. They need to know that I didn't harass you or make you feel unsafe. They need to know the truth. I will, she said quietly. To her credit, Hazel did follow through on that promise. She sent a message to our group chat explaining that she had misrepresented the situation and that I had actually been respectful throughout the whole thing. She apologized for causing drama and asked everyone to move on. But the damage was already done. The dynamic of our friend group had changed permanently. There was this underlying tension now. This awareness that one of us had been willing to manipulate the others to get what she wanted. Trust, once broken, is incredibly hard to rebuild. I also realized that I didn't want to rebuild it, at least not with Hazel. Her test had revealed something about her character that I couldn't unsee. She was willing to hurt me to protect her own ego. She was willing to lie to our friends to avoid taking responsibility for her actions. Those weren't the qualities I wanted in a close friend. We maintained a polite but distant relationship after that. We'd say hi at group gatherings, make small talk, laugh at each other's jokes, but we never hung out one-on-one again. I never went to her apartment. We never had those long, meandering conversations about life and dreams and stupid internet memes. Some of our mutual friends tried to encourage us to work things out, or get back to how things used to be. But I wasn't interested. How things used to be was based on a lie. The lie that Hazel saw me as just a friend. The lie that she was trustworthy. The lie that she would never hurt me to get what she wanted. About 6 months later, Hazel started dating someone new. A guy named Trevor she met at a yoga class. I was happy for her, genuinely. I hoped he would make her happy in a way I never could have. And I hoped she'd learned something from our situation about communication and honesty and treating people with respect. As for me, I learned some valuable lessons too. I learned that boundaries aren't about shame or sexualization. They're about respect and comfort. I learned that manipulation can wear the mask of victimhood. I learned that someone can care about you and still be willing to hurt you if it serves their purposes. Most importantly, I learned to trust my instincts. When Hazel first started pushing boundaries and making me uncomfortable, I should have addressed it directly instead of second-guessing myself. When she lashed out after the changing incident, I should have recognized it as manipulation instead of wondering if I was the problem. Looking back now, I realized that our friendship had been slowly deteriorating for months before the incident. Hazel's tests and boundary pushing, her comments about me being uptight and traditional, her attempts to make me feel bad about my own comfort levels, these were all red flags that I ignored because I cared about her and wanted to believe the best about her intentions. But caring about someone doesn't mean you have to accept their poor treatment of you. And wanting to maintain a friendship doesn't mean you should sacrifice your own boundaries and self-respect. I'm not angry at Hazel anymore. I understand that she was dealing with her own feelings and insecurities, and that people sometimes make bad choices when they're hurt or confused. But understanding someone's behavior doesn't mean you have to tolerate it or continue to expose yourself to it. These days, I'm more careful about friendships. I pay attention to how people handle conflict and disagreement. I notice whether they respect boundaries or try to push past them. I watch for signs that someone might be testing me or trying to manipulate me into giving them what they want. I'm also more confident in my own judgment. When something feels wrong, I trust that feeling instead of trying to rationalize it away. When someone tries to make me feel bad for having boundaries, I recognize it as a red flag instead of assuming I'm being unreasonable. The whole experience taught me that friendship, real friendship, is built on mutual respect and honest communication. It's not about tests or games or hidden agendas. It's not about manipulating someone into giving you what you want or punishing them when they don't read your mind. Good friends respect your boundaries even when they don't understand them. They communicate directly about their feelings instead of expecting you to guess. They handle conflict with maturity and honesty instead of trying to turn other people against you. Hazel wasn't capable of being that kind of friend to me, at least not at that point in her life. Maybe she is now. I genuinely hope so. But I'm not willing to find out at the expense of my own peace of mind and self-respect. So am I the asshole for getting mad at a friend for changing in front of me? I don't think so. I think I'm someone who learned the hard way that respect and boundaries aren't about shame or sexualization. They're about treating each other with dignity and care. I think I'm someone who discovered that manipulation can come from people you trust, and that standing up for yourself sometimes means accepting the loss of a relationship you valued. Most importantly, I think I'm someone who learned that you can't build real intimacy, friendship or otherwise, on tests and games and hidden expectations. You build it on honesty, respect, and the courage to be vulnerable without trying to control how the other person responds. I miss the friend I thought Hazel was. But I don't miss the drama, the manipulation, or the constant feeling that I was failing some test I didn't know I was taking. These days, my friendships are built on a foundation of mutual respect and clear communication, and they're stronger and more fulfilling because of it. And if someone ever tries to make me feel bad for having reasonable boundaries again, I'll know exactly what to do. Trust myself, stand my ground, and remember that anyone who truly cares about me will respect my comfort level instead of trying to manipulate me past it. That's not being uptight or old-fashioned or sexist. That's being human, and there's nothing wrong with that.